Okay, so we read the Mishnah on Tzadi Gimel Amud Aleph. We'll read it again. So the Mishnah says it's 93A1. Misha Yanasu Shalosh Nashim. If someone was married to three women, and we're in a case where they got married on the same day. I don't know exactly they got married in Ma'arvim Simcha B'Simcha, but it has to be they got married the same day. Even if the Kesuvos were dated on the same day, but let's say they were dated a year later, but all three on the same day, we would have to say it's from the Tanai Basin. Even if there wouldn't have been a written ksuva, we would have to say that the ksuva, the obligation to pay the ksuva must have been from the day of that they were married, even if there wasn't a written ksuva on those days. So whatever, they got married on the same day, umeis, and then he died, and he doesn't ksuvasa shel zumana v'shel zumasayim v'shel zu shlosh meos. The one of them ksuva was 100 zuz. The one of the wives had a ksuva of 200 zuz, and the third one had a ksuva of 300. So altogether, they were owed 600 zuz for their ksuvas. There's one problem: the ancient alamana, the whole estate only has 100 zuz. So how does it get split? Chok and b'shava, they split equally, so each gets 31. 33 and a third zuz. Hayusham Asayim, if they're the same case of the three women with the three different amounts, but in this case, the estate had 200 zuz. So, Shal Mana Notel Hamishim, the woman whose ksuba was for 100, she gets paid 50 zuz from the estate. Shal Masayim v'Shal Shoshmeel Shlosha Shal Zav. And then the two other wives with the 200 and 300 zuz ksubas, they each take 75. They take three gold pieces. Each gold piece is worth 25 zuz. So they get 75. So one gets 50, one gets 75, the other gets 75. So that's altogether 200. So even though the one for 300 had the biggest lien against the estate, she doesn't get the most money. She gets the same as the medium size ksuba. Hayusham shlosh meos, if there were 300 zuz in the estate, so hamana notas hamishim. So the woman who had a 50 shekel, a 100 zuz ksuva takes 50 zuz. V'shal masayim mana. The woman who had the 200 zuz, she gets 100 zuz for her ksuva. V'shal shlosh meos, she sells out. And the one who had the 300 zuz ksuva, she gets 6 gold pieces. So 6 times 25 is 150. So one gets 50, one gets 100, one gets 150, altogether 300. So that case makes a lot of sense. Well, because in that case, her the obligation owed her was 3 times the amount of the woman whose was only 100, so she gets paid 3 times as much in this case. So in this case, it's all proportional to there's enough money in the estate so that they get paid proportional amounts. Chemda, do you want to go to Parshan Pizza? Do you want to? Um, and similarly, if 3 people put money literally into a pocket, but it means that they were partners, so they put into a common fund. They didn't put the same equal amounts into this partnership. Pischo isiru, if the partnership lost money, pischo there was less, or they got more money. Kachin chokim, they would also split it this way. So the Gemara asks, and the middle case, shall mana notas chamishim, plus notas v'tilsu the isle. So in the second case, the first woman who had of 100, she gets 50 zuz. Why does she get 50 plus and plus v'tilsu the isle? She should only get 33 and a third. Meaning the Gemara is asking if the first case they split equally the 100 zuz 3 ways. In this case, where there's a second if there's a second 100 zuz, let her keep just that amount, and the additional 200 zuz should be split proportionally, probably between the two women, with the one with the claim of 200 zuz and the woman with the claim of 300 zuz. So what's the logic for this? Rashi says because um, when there was 100 zuz in the whole estate, each woman had a claim against that full 100 zuz in the estate. So therefore, they had an equal. It got split equally. But in this case, once there's 200 zuz, we should say that that all three women have an equal claim against the first 100 zuz, so it should be split equally. Then the second and third woman, the one with the 200 and the 300 zuz, they both have a claim against the next 100 zuz, but the first woman has no claim because her claim was already only against 100. So the first woman should only have 33 and a third, and she shouldn't get anything additional. How come she's getting more in this case? How come she's getting 50? So Amar Shmuel b'Kesuvos balas masayim levalas mana dinu dvarm ein limach b'mana. So it's because it's an unusual case where the woman who had the ksuv of 200 zuz wrote to the woman who had the ksuv of 100 zuz, where I don't have any argument with you for 100 zuz. So therefore, meaning basically she's kind of saying I'm foregoing my first 100 and I'm not my second 100. So therefore, the first 100 zuz of the estate gets split between the first woman and the third woman, so they each get 50, and then the second one gets split between the second woman and the third woman. So the first woman isn't getting anything additional, but it's a special case where the second woman didn't get anything from the first. But if this is true, what about the third case? The second part of the ruling is that we're splitting between the second woman and the third woman are each getting 75 zuz. Why are they getting? So the first one gets 50, the second and third each gets 75. So that's a total that the estate is paying out all 200 zuz that it has. Tema la hasaka denaf mina. Let the third woman, the one who had the 300 zuz, would tell the woman who had the 200 zuz mana, because you forwent. I don't know if that's a legal word. Your first 100 zuz, I have a claim of 200 additional, and you just have a claim of 100. Why should I and you split this equally? I should be getting more than you. So the Gemara says, "Mishum de Amra Allah midina dvarim hu desliki nafshay," because the woman with the 200 zuz said, "I only removed myself from having this going through Beis Din and splitting it, but I was not actually foregoing the ksuva." So it's a difference between it actually dinu dvarim ainli imach versus dinu dvarim. She's not relinquishing her claim. She's only saying, I'm not going to fight you over the collection of this, but I'm not relinquishing my claim to the full 200 that I got. So it's a little bit of a strange case. 2 dots. The third case of the Mishnah, if the estate had 300 zuz, we say the first one gets 50, the second one gets 100, and the third one gets 150. Shal Masayim Mana, so the middle woman who had his ksuv of 200 gets 100 zuz overall. Shivim Chamisha Hu de Isle. She should only get 75 because the case that we just said is where she forwent, the middle woman forwent the case from the first 100, so she shouldn't get 100 after forgoing her first 100 to have 100 left. She shouldn't. It would end up that she's making out better than the other two percentage-wise. Shiva Chamishu, so she should only have 75. So Amar Shmuel says, because Sevas Bala Shlosh Meos Labalas Masai Malvalas Mana, Dvinu Dvarm Ainli Machem B'Mane. It's where the woman with the big suva, 300 zuz, wrote to the both of the other women that she wasn't having any dispute about 100 zuz. But so the case is changing. Instead of the second woman foregoing part of her money, the second woman in this case didn't forego any money. It's the third one who was willing to forego some money. So therefore, the 200 zuz lady makes more than the 100 zuz lady. Rabbi Yaakov in Har Pekod Mishmei Ravina Amar. We have a second explanation from Rabbi Yaakov from the river Pekod or Nahar Pekod in the name of Ravina. Said Reisha b'shtei tfisos. The first case is where they got money from the estate in two different times. B'seifa b'shtei tfisos. And the second case is also talking about where they got money from the estate in two different bunches. Reisha b'shtei tfisos to naflu shivim chamisha b'chad zimna u'mea v'esmer chamisha b'chad zimna. The first case, which is really the second case, but it's before the third case, where the estate had 200, is when first they had 75 zuz to split up, and then the estate got more money. They had 125 additional. So in the first 75, they split it equally 25, 25, 25, and then when they had another 125, so they split 75 of that three ways again, 25, 25, 25. And then the remaining 50, the woman with the two bigger ksuvos split that 50 shekel two ways. So they each got 75. But normally but according to this answer, it seems that if the estate would have had 200 at one time, they would have split it proportionally. But again, according to Rashi's proportionally, it would have been 33, 33, 30, 33 and a third each way. And then the second one would have been split. Well, no, that was when there was 100. Well, so they're so for whatever reason, so they're not getting proportionally in this case. But it's 75 and then 125, it's split a certain way. Seifa b'shtei tfisos. And then the third case where there was 300 zuz in the so in the third case of the mission of the estate had 300 zuz. So the Gemara says that the first woman gets 50, the second one gets 100, and the third one gets 150. So that's a case where the estate first had 75 at once, so each one gets 25. And then 225 at another time. So another 75 is split equally again. So they each now have 50. And then we have another 150 to split. So that middle 50 is split two ways. And then the last $50 only goes to the woman who had the biggest ksuva. Here, Morty, let me pick up the baby. What shall have it? You okay? Oh, let me get you. Good morning. Sit down. Sit down on the chair. No, not on that chair. You want to sit next to me? Okay. So sit on that chair. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Zu Mishnah's Rabbi Nassan. This Mishnah was the opinion of Rabbi Nassan. But Rabbi Omer, Ein ani rod dvarav shel Rabbi Nassan be'elu elachokos b'shav. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says that I say that they should split equally, not proportionally. Oh, so this is talking about not the case of the Ksuva, but it's talking about the case of he's arguing the last case of the Mishnah says that if three people were going to be partners and invested together, it gets split this way. So Rabbi is arguing on that. He says no, for investment they split it equally, not like the case of these women. Amar Shmuel. Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. In the case of Ksuva, and then the Mishnah says v'chein shlosha sheitilu, and also it would get split if three people invested as a partnership on equal amounts, and then if it had gains or losses, it would also be paid this way. But Rabbi is arguing on the Mishnah. But the way Rashi is saying it, that Rashi seems to be saying that Rabbi is arguing in the case of the profits, because in the case of Ksuva, each woman has a claim against the estate. In the case of profits, there's no claim. You're just trying to figure out how to split the profit. So it doesn't have to follow the same logic. Amar Shmuel says, Shnaim Shetil Lakis, if two people deposited into a partnership, Zeman of Zemasayim, one gave 100 Jews and one gave 200, Haschar La'emtza. Profit is shared down the middle. So why does that make sense? If they didn't put in the same amount, how come they get the same amount? So Amarabba, Mistaber Milsa de Shmuel, B'Shor Lacharisha V'Omer Lacharisha. It's a case where they both invested to buy an axe to thresh, and it was continually used to plow, and it was used to plow. Aval B'Shor Lacharisha V'Omer Latvicha, but if they had invested for a shore to plow, but now they're going to shacht it. They split it based on how much they put in. Rav Hamnuna Amar, but Rav Hamnuna says afilu shalach richa v'amid l'tvicha hasachar la'emtza. But Rav Hamnuna says even if they put in the money to buy an axe to plow, and now it's going to be shechted, they still split the difference equally. So I guess that when they bought it to plow, so imagine lahavdil in Illinois, there's the excavation companies. When there's a road construction project, so here you bought this shore. I don't know that the two of them to share or to rent out to other people, rent a plow. So the business was plowing, and but now that they decided they were going to shech this animal, the purpose has changed a little bit. So Rabbi says, so because it changed, they don't get paid equally anymore. They get paid proportionally. But Ravina says, was it Ravina? Rav Hamnuna said it doesn't matter, even though the purpose of it changed. The the profit still gets split down the middle. Mesave, they asked against Rabbi that when it got changed from a plow axe to that they were shechting it, that he says in that case they don't get paid equally. Shnaim shetilu lakis. A brisa says if two people invested into a fund for a partnership, zeman of a zemasign, one gave 100, one gave 200. Hasachar laemtza. They split the profit down the middle. My lav b'shor lacharisha. Why don't we say this is in a case where they bought the axe as a plow, and now they're going to shaft it. Utuf to Rabba, and that will be a disproof to Rabba. So the Gemara says, "Lo b'shor lacharisha v'amel lacharisha." So no, so Rabba would explain the brisa is talking about exactly the case that he is the same way that he explained. So I mean, the brisa doesn't explicitly say that it's the case different than what Rabbi says. So he could explain the brisa is saying the case just like he says. So then the Gemara says, "Aval sholach rishav amad v'chamai." Excuse me for a minute. Split the profit 50-50, even though they didn't put in, even though one put in twice as much as the other. Or I guess in the case where if they were shafting the animal, whatever, and the value went down, they end up losing on their partnership, they would split the loss. Even though one put in twice as much, he doesn't lose more than the other guy. If one put in 50, one put in 100, and they sold it for 200, so they get the $25 profit. Right. And then the one who put in 100 get 125, and the one who put in the 50 gets 75. Right, that's why I assume that they would put in what they got, plus each one would get half the profit. Yeah, so they get their initial investment back, plus half of, they split the profit 50-50, even though one put in more. So here we're in, let's see, 93B1, the end of the first column. But if they would have bought an axe for plowing, and now it's going to be shechted, what would be the halacha? Would they each one get a proportion according to how much they put in? Adatani seifa, because the reason that this won't make sense is because they have to look at the second part of the brisa. Let's say that this one bought equipment for the partnership, which would be in this case an axe, and the other one bought an axe. So they had their idea. They were having a rent a plow company. So this one bought an axe and put it into the partnership, and this one bought an axe and put it into the partnership. So instead of putting in the money, each one actually contributed an animal. And one animal was 200, was worth 200, one was worth 100. The Brisa says each one pays according to how much the profits that they would realize or the losses they would take is according to the percentages or the proportions that they put into it. So liflog v'lisni bedida, according to the way he's explaining the Brisa Rabbah, the Brisa should say that the second case is talking about a different case than the first case. That's if the oxen were bought for plowing and they're still being used for plowing. Aval if they had originally bought it for plowing and now it's going to be shechted, they pay according to the proportion. Because again, the first part of the brisa said, if two people put money into a fund, this one put in 100 and this put in 200, they put the profit down the middle. And we're explaining that case is when the axe was for plowing, and it's still going to be used for plowing. And now the second case is where they each one put in, instead of cash, they put in oxen into their partnership. We should say that when it's proportional, we should say that that's only when there when it was originally for plowing, and now they're going to shecht it. So the Gemara says, "Hachinami kamer." No, the Bryce is saying that also. But Madvar more in B'Sharla Charisha V'Amel Charisha. If B'Sharla Charisha V'Amel Tvicha, Nasik Mishalaka Zebishla B'Zebishla B'Sarvu. Meaning the first case, when it says that they split the profits equally, that's if they put in money to buy a shore, an axe for plowing, and it's still being used for plowing. But if it was an axe for plowing and now they're going to shecht it, it becomes a case where it's as if each one contributed an axe itself, not the cash, but the axe itself into the partnership, and now it's been combined into one partnership. Each one gets proportionate to what he put in. Now, these cases that we've been talking about in our Gemara are a little bit frustrating because we're talking about very specific cases where there's all types of it's not just a simple case where it was 50-50. In the case of the Kesuvos, we're talking about either that the one of the women decided to forego part of the dispute, and then the other explanation was the estate got money in two different chunks, and that's why the money wasn't split proportionally. And now in this case about the partnership, we have these different cases of, did they put money into the partnership? Did they put the animals into the partnership? Is the animals for the plowing partnership still being used for plowing, or now did they change their mind? Because it changes. It's not so easy to just keep track of all these different situations that the Gemara is saying that the Mishnah is talking about. Right. Yeah, now it's going to be even worse. I heard instead of just the internal revenue service, now it's going to be an external revenue service. I mean, Mr. Schwartz would come out of retirement. Okay. It's non. We learned in our Mishnah. Similarly, if three people invested money together into one pocket, if the partnership lost money or it made money, they also split it the same proportions that we said these three women would have split the ksuba. My lav pichsu mamish. So why don't we say the case of when the value went down means they actually suffered a loss, and osiro mamish. And if there was more money, it means that they actually they actually made money on their partnership. Still, they get they would split proportionally. So Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rava Baravua lo Hosira Zuzi Chadati Hisru Astira Sulisa. When it means that they have more money, that means that they actually got more money. So they did make some money on their endeavor, but lost Astira de Tunisa. So this is a case where the government said this money is worthless now. And so instead of, let's say, this coin was worth $1, the coin now is worth 10 cents because it's not worth anything as money. But if people had certain type of wound on their foot, under their foot, they would put a coin underneath the foot, and the relief, who's the relief of that was minted on the coin, pressure into the foot, and also this material, the metal itself, would produce healing. So they didn't suffer or incur a loss based on their business making a bad decision or market changing. The actual money that they had contributed to their fund has been invalidated by the government. So let's say it's worth 10 cents on the dollar what it was worth before. So the actual coins that they had can only now be used for foot pain. That if you had a certain type of wound on your foot, you put it under the foot, and the Gemara in Shabbos says that the part that was minted puts a pressure against the foot, and some something that the metal has, whatever, also helps heal the foot. So the money, you can't buy and sell stuff with it anymore. Now it's only good for people with foot pain. Okay, so now we're at the Mishnah in the middle, towards the bottom of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis. Misha Yanasoi Dalid Nashim Umeis Rishona Umeis. If someone was married to four wives, and then he died. Harishona Kademas Shnia. So in this case, their Kesuvos, they got married at different times and they're different dates. So the first woman has a claim before the second woman has a claim. Ushnia Lishlishis. The second woman has a claim before against the estate before the third woman. Ushlishis Servius, and the third one has a claim before the fourth. Rishona Nishbis Lishnia. So there is a machlokas if there literally is a case, if there has to be four wives, or the halacha, the Mishnah could have taught us the same thing with only two wives. That there's two wives, and one got married earlier, so her claim against the estate predates the claim of the second woman. So some say that the same halacha would be with four, but the reason that the Mishnah says, excuse me, with two wives, the reason the Mishnah says four wives is because the Mishnah started talking about having two wives, and then we just had the case where there were three wives, and then the estate didn't have enough money. And so now, just for memory purposes, so that the people who are memorizing the Mishnayos, because it was oral, they would remember the Mishnayos in the order: a case of two, a case of three, a case of four. Oh, before we say this Mishnah. So I don't understand it now as well as I thought I did last week. But I mentioned last week that Professor Yisrael Aumann, Robert Aumann, who won the Nobel, said that the way that the Mishnah splits up here, the 50, 75, 75, the 50, 100, 150, it fits in with the game theory solutions of the cases. So he doesn't go according to he's talking about the plain case of the Mishnah, not the cases that the Gemara explains that it's really talking about. But he says the Gemara didn't know about game theory, but it ends up fitting in with some game theory solutions using game theory to similar cases. So that's what he had said. Okay, so our Mishnah again on Tzadi Gimel base. Misha Nasui Arba Nashib. So he was married to four wives. Each one got married before, so we sat at a different date. So the first one has the first claim against the estate. The second one has the second estate claim against the estate. So the Mishnah says, Rishon Nishbas Lishnia. When the first one who has the first claim, she has to take give a shavua, an oath to the second wife that she didn't receive anything yet from her ksuva. Because think about it. If the first woman is taking money, that's leaving less for the second wife. So because by the first one collecting, it is somewhat detrimental to the second one, we require the first wife to give a shvua to the second wife that she didn't collect anything yet. And so therefore she's entitled to all this. And the second one, she's not doing anything against the second one. She has an earlier claim. So that's what gets paid out first. Thank you. Ushnia lishlishis, and the second wife has to give a shvua to the third wife that she didn't collect anything, and everything that she's collecting is owed to her. Ushlishis Rabbi, and the third one has to take a claim to the fourth wife that she didn't collect anything, and so if there's nothing left, the fourth one's going to be out of luck. But the Tanakama holds that the fourth woman can collect without a shvua because there's no later wife after her who's potentially getting shortchanged by her collecting her ksuva, so she doesn't have to make a shvua. Bananas argues with because she's last, she ends up getting a better deal, that the first three have to make a shvua, and she doesn't have to take a shvua. So she could also only collect her part even if, only if she takes a shvua. Hayu yotzin kulam biyom echad. If the ksuvos that they brought all were dated on the same day, so kol hakodemus l'chaverta zachza, whichever one was written first on that day, she gets to collect first from the estate. So, but how do we know which ksuva is written first? So the Mishnah continues and says, "V'kacha yikosim b'Yushalayim shaos." In Yerushalayim, shtaros didn't just have the date on them; they also had the hour of the day on them. So if it was written in Yerushalayim, we knew if this one was at 9 a.m. and this was at 10 a.m. and this was 11 a.m., we know that which one was first. But hayu kulam yotzos b'sha achas. But if the ksuva all had the same hour of the day on them, because remember they didn't have clocks, so they would just written the first hour of the day, the second hour of the day, the third hour of the day. Ve'ein sham elamana, and there's only 100 zuz in the whole estate. Chokos b'shaveh. They would split the ksuvos equally. So obviously, it's not just talking about Yerushalayim. If the ksuvos were all dated on the same day, not in Yerushalayim, so there's no way of knowing which one was first. So they would just split equally because the estate doesn't have enough money to pay all the ksuvos. So they would, so in those cases, they're all considered that they have tfisa, that their claim against the estate happens at the same time. So they would all split the estate equally. And in this case, we're not talking about cases where the ksuvos were different, it seems. The previous one shows when the ksuvos had different amounts, and this one is where they do not. This. So the Gemara says, what's the machlok between the Tanakama and Bananas? That do we make the fourth woman collect with a shvur or not with a shvur? Amar Shmuel says, as we turn to Tzadi Dalet Amar Aleph, what? Higon shenimtzas achas mehem sada she'ena shalo ubabal chov ma'ucher shekanim v'gava kamiflagi. It's a case where one of the fields one of the fields of the estate had previously been paid out, but now they realize that that field wasn't really owned by the husband. It was really owned by someone else. Like this guy was using it, they thought it was his, but really they found out that it wasn't his field. And so therefore, after the fourth woman collects, now that they may have to found out that's one of the women who collected before, what she got really wasn't the husband's to pay to her. So therefore, what the fourth woman gets might need to be taken away to pay one of the earlier wives. So because of that, Banana says she has to take a shvua. But if it's a case where all the money that had been paid out, there was no question about the ownership, it seems that Bananas would agree that she'd be allowed to take her field without a shvua. And Bananas and the Tanakama are talking about where a creditor who was lower down in the line of precedence somehow collected a field earlier than he should have. So let's say you had a Class A field, Class B, Class C, and Class D. So somehow, for whatever reason, this guy, this Balcho Meucher, so the Class C, it was a much later debt. So therefore, he only can seize fields based on his date. Somehow he seized a field that was earlier than his lien was from. So he got something that he shouldn't have gotten hold of. So he got, let's say, something that would have been from the second group of creditors, and even though he was in the fourth group, chronologically, somehow this guy got a field earlier. Tanakama savar mashagava logava. The Tanakama holds that this was considered improperly collected, so therefore this guy who was fourth in line, who got a second in line field, it was improperly collected, so he has to relinquish it, and it's not considered his. Ubenana savar mashagava gava. And Bananas holds, even though it wasn't his to collect it, he should have had to wait for the chronological creditors to collect stuff first before he did. But Bananas holds because he did somehow get possession of this property, he gets to keep the property. So therefore, this wife, the fourth, so let's say he sees something that he shouldn't have, and so therefore, when the fourth wife gets her ksuva, really some of the stuff that she got was going to have to be paid to an earlier wife. So therefore, she's required to give a shavua that she hadn't received anything from her from the estate. Amar of Nachman, Amar of Ravua. Rav Nachum Rabbi Baravua gives a different explanation of the machlok between Bananas and the Tanakama. The Kuliyama Mashagavu Logava. Bananas and the Chachamim and the Tanakama both agree that this guy who was fourth in line to get fields, who sees the ones who were second in line, it was considered improperly collected, and it's not his to collect. The Hacha B'Chashin. So, but in the meantime, this fourth wife has a field, but before we could repossess this back, so we want to give this field back to one of the earlier wives. But the problem is, we're worried that is the fourth wife who has this field right now, is she gonna make the field's value go down significantly in the interim? Mar Savar Cheshina and Shemataxif. Bananas is worried that the way that she's going to use the field is gonna make the field be worth a lot less, and therefore and so because it might get taken to pay one of the earlier wives, she has to take a shvua because she might cause the field. This last wife might cause the field to be worth less. Umar Savar Lo Cheshina and Shemataxif. And Tanakama is not worried that she's going to make the field worth less, and therefore that wife does not need to make a shvua that she didn't receive anything from the in payment of her ksubiya. Abai gives a different explanation between the machlokes between Bananas and the Tanakama. The Abai Kshisha Ikemenayo. They're arguing about a halacha of Abai Kshisha, the old Abai. The Tani Abai Kshisha, because Abai Kshisha taught Yisomim Sha'amru, when we talk about that when you collect from Yisomim, you have to take a Shvua, so it doesn't Yisomim Gedolim Ein Tzarich Lamerktanim. We're talking about cases where they're adults. Yeah, okay. They're talking about adults. And if you have to take a shavua when you're collecting from an estate from adults, you certainly have to take a shavua if you want to collect from an estate where the heirs are actual minors. Tanakama leisled the Abayik Shisha. The Tanakama does not agree with Abayik Shisha, and so he holds that if the kids of the heirs of the estate are gedolim, are adults, you don't need to take a shvua because they're adults. Bananas islay the Abayik Shisha, and Bananas holds like a Abayik Shisha, and even when you're collecting from adult heirs, the Chachamim required you to take a shvua that you didn't collect, that you didn't collect, that the money was owed you, you didn't receive any payment yet before you're allowed to collect from the estate. So it would seem that according to this explanation, I don't know if Abaye and it was related to the elder Abaye, because Abaye was quoting the Abaye Kshisha, the older Abaye, but it seems that the machlokas is, according to the Tanakama, the heirs are all adults, so therefore the fourth wife doesn't need to take a shvua. And according to Bananas, even if they're adults, she has to take a shvua. Amar Rav Huna said, Hani trei achi trei shutve, the Isai Dina Baharichad. If two brothers, talking about splitting their Yerusha, or two partners, the Islu Dina Baharichad, who have a din Torah with someone else against this thing that they have either in the partnership or the brothers, because there's a separate sugya. If Achim Shachalku, brothers who split an estate, are they considered like partners? So once it got split, it split, or do they stay like Yorshim? And if something happens based on some previous thing, they would split. We would put the remaining properties together and split it again as if the Yerusha is being reapportioned right now. I'm teaching the Torah right now. So if I'm too loud, maybe you should sit over there, okay? So then I won't be too loud in your ear. So either one brother or one of the partner went to a din Torah. The other brother or the other partner can't say that, okay, you had a din Torah with that guy, but now I want my own din Torah for my share of our partnership or my share of the Yerusha with that guy. No, avad. The one brother or the one partner is, when he acts in this din Torah, he's considered the shliach of the other one, and so it's lahavdil, it's class action. So in this case, the brothers are in one class, so we're not going to split up and have separate trials for each one. We say they're one class, and what the Beis Din decides for one of them will apply to all of them, and we wouldn't have separate lawsuits for each one. Ikla Rav Nachman l'Sura. Rav Ikla came to the city Sura Shailuha from the yeshiva there. They asked him, Ki hai gavna mai? What's the halacha in this case where the partners had a din Torah with someone else, or two heirs, brothers had, and one of them lost the case? So the other brother says, well, I want my own case because you lost the case. If I would have the din Torah, I'm going to win my case. So what's the halacha in this case? So Amar Lahu, Rav Nachman says, Masnisan he. This law can be learned from a Mishnah. Harishona nishbas l'shniya. The first wife has to swear to the second. Ushniya l'shlishas l'shlishas revias. And the second one swears to the third that she didn't get any money for the ksuba, and the third swears to the fourth. Be'ilu rishona l'shlishas l'ktani. But it doesn't say that the first one has to swear to the second and the third and the fourth. She only swears to the second. Why? My taima la mishum d'shlichus avda. Because it must be that when the second one is trying to collect a portion of the ksuva, included in her claim are all the following claims also of the third wife and the fourth wife also. So therefore, the shvua that the first wife gives to the second wife is as if it's also given to the third wife and the fourth wife, because they're from a similar class from claimants against the estate for ksuvas. Okay, good. So Rav Nachman wanted to say that this halacha, that two partners or two brothers, when there's a din Torah between one of them and someone else, the din Torah is considered for the whole class, for all of the yorshim or all the partners, even though it wasn't explicitly says. So the Gemara doesn't like that though. The Gemara says, "Midami, is it similar? Hasam shvua la'achad shvua lameya." When you give a shvua, what's the difference between a shvua to one? A shvua to one is a shvua to 100 people. This is a phrase. But Pacha Amar, but in this case, where they actually had a din Torah about it, the other partner says, "Ilo hano havai teina tfei." If I would have been able to give a better claim, and I would have won. So meaning a shvua is a shvua. There's no difference between Sarah giving a shvua to Rivka or Sarah giving a shvua to Rivka and Rachel. But in the case of the din Torah, so one brother could say, I would have given a better claim and I would have won the din Torah. So our Mishnah cannot be a proof that these are the same. The lo amran ad lo ise V'lo amran eladol ise b'masa. And also, this is only true where they're not in the same city. Aval isa b'masa iboyle lemeise. But if one brother or one partner was having a din Torah and the other partner was in town or the other brother was in the same town, he should have come when the din was going on. If he was in town and he didn't come, he can't later say, "Well, I would have come to base and I would have had better claims and I would have won." Okay, let's leave it here.